Before you scroll away, listen closely because this might explain the singular bond you are still unable to shake. Not the one that was convenient, nor the one that appeared flawless from the outside. I am talking about the one that altered something profound within you and never returned it. Some individuals enter your life and leave merely a memory, something you can relegate to the past and move past. But others arrive like a pivotal crossroads. They awaken a part of you that had been dormant for years, and after that, nothing feels commonplace again. You can deem it timing, you can call it destiny, you can label it a lesson. But whatever title you grant it, your heart recognizes this was never something minor or insignificant. And if you have been attempting to press forward while something inside you keeps glancing back, remain here because this is where it becomes genuine. There are instances in life when a person appears and the concept of random chance begins to feel far too weak to account for it. You try to look back and connect the dots. You try to make the narrative neat and rational so it makes sense in your mind. But deep down you already recognize that logic was never guiding this one. This person did not merely enter your world, they arrived with meaning, they arrived with weight, they arrived with a purpose that your mind may still be struggling to comprehend. When they entered your life, something shifted inside you in a quiet but permanent way. It did not require drama to be powerful. It did not require flawless words to prove itself. It was felt in your body, in your thoughts, in the way your inner landscape began to transform after encountering them. And even now, as you try to convince yourself it is finished, there is still a magnetic pull you cannot entirely ignore. Not panic, not obsession, but something more profound, something familiar, something steady that keeps drawing your attention back time and again. Not because you are weak, but because a part of you acknowledges that this connection reached a truth that ordinary experiences do not touch. Vital moments do not always arrive when life is uncomplicated. They frequently arrive when something inside you is finally prepared to see. Perhaps that is why this message located you now. Perhaps some part of you is waking up and observing what it sidestepped before. There is a quiet knowing inside you that refuses to remain silent no matter how much you try to rationalize your way out of it. That is what matters here. Fleeting feelings fade, illusions crumble, but what is real has a way of returning until it is comprehended properly. So if this feels familiar, keep listening, because the next section may explain why this connection still resides inside you. You may feel divided right now. One part of you wants to let go, safeguard your peace, and move forward without glancing back. Another part of you cannot deny what was felt, what was sparked, and what still feels incomplete. You move through your days trying to act normal while your heart carries a question your mind cannot resolve. You may even wonder if you imagined it, or if you attributed meaning to something that never truly possessed depth. But if it were only imagination, time would have weakened it by now. Distance would have blurred it. Silence would have concluded it. Yet something still remains. And not only remains, but shows up in quiet and unexpected ways. That is what makes it difficult to dismiss. This connection did not stay alive because your mind desired a story. It stayed because it reached a place in you that recognizes truth before words can express it. And that truth is not loud. It does not force itself. It waits. It rises in still moments. It returns in dreams. It appears in sudden emotion. It shows up in memories that strike your chest before your thoughts can explain them. Some connections are not here just to entertain your emotions. They are here to alter something inside you. They open doors within you that cannot simply be shut again, no matter how much time passes or how far life moves. And once that kind of door opens, life does not return to what it was prior. This is why what you feel is not simple craving or attachment. Obsession is loud. It pushes. It demands answers quickly, but what you feel may be quieter, deeper, and more honest than that. It moves beneath the surface. It waits in the background of your day. It appears when everything becomes still enough for you to hear yourself again. That kind of feeling often stems from something that touched your deeper self, not just passing desire. And here is something many people do not comprehend. Silence from the other person does not always signify absence of feeling. Sometimes it means the feeling is so intense that they do not know how to handle it. Some people carry deep emotion behind calm behavior. Some step back not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much and do not know how to stay grounded in it. Their distance may not be lack of care. It may be fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of losing the emotional protection they constructed long before you arrived. This is where strong connections often become complicated. One person becomes open faster. One person becomes honest sooner. The other feels exposed and steps back because the mirror in front of them shows something they are not ready to face. You may have become that mirror. You may have touched the exact part they usually hide from the world. and that does not disappear just because someone avoids it. Once something real is awakened, it continues working quietly under the surface. It does not vanish. It does not reset. It continues to shape thoughts, reactions, and choices in ways that are not always visible. What they have not resolved within themselves may still be influencing how they behave. People call it confusion, mixed signals, bad timing, or fate. But often it is unresolved fear expressing itself in different forms. A person can care deeply and still run from what that care requires. They can feel something real and still delay it. They can miss what is in front of them because they are not ready to live at that level of emotional honesty. But once something inside them has truly been awakened, it does not return to sleep easily. You may have entered their life to remind them what emotional truth feels like. And once a place like that is touched, it remembers real encounters are never wasted. If this connection had no meaning at all, it would have ended cleanly. It would not keep echoing through memories, moments, and small reminders that still feel alive. That does not mean you are meant to force anything. It simply means there may still be movement happening that you cannot see yet. There is a difference between forcing a locked door open and understanding that a door opens when the right moment arrives. This is the part many people rush through. They think hope is weakness, but grounded hope is not weakness. Sometimes it is intuition in a calmer form, and if your heart feels more steady than panicked when you think about this, pay attention to that. Calm often carries truth more clearly than fear does. At the same time, this path is not asking you to stay stuck. It is asking you to grow into something more stable within yourself. That is the deeper purpose here. Since this connection entered your life, you may have noticed something changing in you. You are no longer satisfied with what once felt enough. Shallow attention feels empty. Half-present love feels obvious. Mixed energy that you once tolerated now feels tiring. That shift matters. Sometimes a connection does not arrive to stay in your life immediately. Sometimes it arrives to wake you up, to show you what you are capable of feeling, and to reveal what no longer fits who you are becoming. That is why letting go feels complicated, because you are not only releasing a person, you are also trying to understand the version of yourself that formed through that experience. Through this bond, you learned how deeply you can feel. You learned that your heart can hold real presence, real devotion, and real emotional depth. You learned that intensity is not always the same as truth. And once you learn that you cannot easily go back to accepting empty connection as enough, the real shift happens when you stop asking, why is this happening to me, and start asking, what is this teaching me about who I am? That is when pain begins to turn into understanding. That is when confusion starts becoming direction. And that is when the connection stops being only about another person and starts becoming a path back to your own center. These kinds of bonds rarely move in straight lines. They return to similar patterns, but each time they ask for more awareness, more honesty, and more emotional maturity than before. What makes it painful is not always lack of feeling. Often it is difference in timing. One person is ready to open, the other is still surrounded by old fears and old habits of self-protection. That is why unresolved connections do not simply disappear. They stay beneath the noise of life. They rise when distractions fade. They become loud in silence. They appear when the heart can no longer avoid itself. There are moments when you become a quiet reference point in someone's mind, even if they never admit it. And maybe that is why certain signs feel stronger lately. Not to trap you in longing, but to keep you steady, while you learn the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment says, I need this person to feel okay. Alignment says, I am already becoming whole, and what belongs with me will meet me there. That difference changes everything. The moment you stop chasing emotional certainty and start standing in your own clarity, the entire energy shifts. Pressure begins to lift. The connection is no longer fueled by fear. It begins to breathe in a different way. And yes, that shift is felt. Not always in words, but in energy, in presence, in awareness. It forces reality to become clearer. Either the bond grows into something honest, or it reveals exactly where it cannot go. Both outcomes matter. Both outcomes bring freedom. This is often the moment when fear starts losing control. The old pattern weakens. The cycle of one person chasing while the other withdraws begins to break. Because when you choose growth, you stop feeding confusion. You stop calling uncertainty love. You stop treating silence as proof of depth. You begin to want something clearer, cleaner, and more real. And that new standard speaks without words. It simply says, if this is real, it must exist in reality. It must come with honesty, intention, and accountability. That message can shake the other person more than pursuit ever did. Because when you stop bending yourself to keep the bond alive, They are forced to face what they truly feel without leaning on your effort, without your constant presence filling the gaps, without your emotional labor holding everything together. And that moment changes everything in a quiet but powerful way. Because suddenly there is space. Space where your effort used to be. Space where your reassurance used to be. Space where your patience used to cover uncertainty. And in that space, truth starts to surface on its own. The idea of losing you completely may begin to feel more real to them than they ever expected. Not as drama, not as panic, but as a simple emotional reality they can no longer ignore. But your task is not to wait in that uncertainty. Your task is not to stay suspended in hope, measuring every silence, decoding every delay, or rebuilding meaning from fragments. Your task is to stay rooted in self-respect, while life reveals what is real. Real love is not something that exists only in private emotion. It is something that can survive clarity, distance, time, and truth. If they return, let it be because they can meet you in honesty, not because they miss your energy while staying unchanged. And if they do not return, let that truth also stand without resistance. Because a truth that hurts is still kinder than a hope that keeps you shrinking. You are being prepared for depth, not fantasy, for clarity, not endless guessing, for love that can exist in daylight, not only in memory or emotion. As this understanding deepens, something else begins to shift inside you. Your thoughts of them may still come, but they arrive differently now. There is less panic, less reaching, less internal chaos, and more stillness, more awareness, more acceptance. That shift is not detachment in the cold sense. It is growth. It is your nervous system learning that it does not have to chase to survive connection. And when one person in a deep bond changes at that level, the entire dynamic begins to respond. Energy seeks balance. If you stop chasing, something inevitably shifts. If you stop begging life for answers and start living as though you are already anchored in your worth, the emotional current between you changes direction. Not by force, but by reality adjusting itself to your new position. They may begin to feel your absence differently, not as punishment, not as rejection, but as presence without demand. And that can be deeply confronting for someone who is used to your emotional availability, always being there in the background, because now they are left alone with their own patterns, their own silence, their own avoidance, their own truth. And in that space they must face what they have been avoiding. The walls they built, the habits they leaned on, the emotional distance they justified, the control they mistook for safety. These defenses may have protected them at one point, but they also limited their ability to experience the kind of connection they actually long for. To move forward, they would have to risk vulnerability. They would have to stop hiding behind confusion, distance, or old pain responses, and that is not a small step. It takes real courage. The kind of courage many people only find when they feel they are about to lose something they never truly valued until it started slipping away. But your role is not to rescue that process. Your role is not to carry it for them, not to wait endlessly for it, and not to abandon yourself while hoping they transform. Your role is to honor yourself so fully that whatever happens next becomes clear without distortion. Whether this path leads to reunion or release, it should no longer break you. It should no longer reduce you. That is one of the clearest signs of healing. You can care deeply and still remain whole. You can feel love and still choose truth. You can hope without abandoning yourself. There is a difference between emotional connection and self-erasure, and you are learning to see that difference more clearly. Now there may still be unfinished meaning here. Not everything unresolved is meant to become permanent separation, but not everything unresolved is meant to become a lifelong bond either. Sometimes it simply means something honest still wants expression. Words that were never spoken do not disappear. Feelings that were never fully acknowledged do not vanish. They wait, they accumulate, and eventually they ask for courage. That courage may lead to a conversation, it may lead to closure, it may lead to something new that does not resemble the old version at all. But whatever it becomes, it will require honesty from both sides. Not assumption, not silence filled with hope, not fear disguised as distance. Real honesty. And your fear may ask, can I trust what I already feel without needing constant proof? Their fear may ask, can I open up without falling back into old defense patterns? These are not small questions, but they are human questions. And sometimes they begin to move quietly beneath the surface long before anyone speaks them aloud. You may notice the idea of reunion no longer feels frantic. It feels quieter now, more grounded, more realistic, less like chasing a possibility and more like understanding a truth that either aligns or does not. That shift alone changes everything about what you are available for emotionally. True bonds are not meant to trap you in confusion or suffering. They are meant to guide you back to yourself. And if communication opens, let it open naturally. Do not force it. Do not rush to fill silence with meaning. Let actions reveal intention. Let consistency define truth. Let time expose what is real and what was only emotional intensity without stability. If fear rises again, let it rise without letting it lead. Fear is often just an echo of old experiences trying to protect you from uncertainty, but it is not always aligned with truth. Pay attention instead to what your body tells you, because your body often recognizes reality before your mind can explain it. When something is not right, everything tightens. Your chest becomes heavy, your thoughts speed up. You feel yourself shrinking, overthinking, performing emotional calculations just to feel safe. But when something is aligned, even if it is uncertain, there is more space inside you, more breath, more steadiness, more quiet presence. That difference matters more than fantasy ever will, because the next part of your journey will not ask for desperation, it will ask for discernment. The ability to tell the difference between chemistry and compatibility, between longing and alignment, between intensity and emotional safety, that can actually last. There is also a quiet strength that grows when you stop needing constant reassurance. You stop checking for signs every hour. You stop trying to decode every silence. You stop asking others to confirm what your own awareness already senses. And something inside you settles, not because you know the ending, but because you finally know yourself more clearly. That clarity changes everything. You no longer need to defend your feelings to people who cannot understand them. You no longer need to shrink your standards just to keep emotional access to someone. Real love does not require confusion as proof. It may challenge you. Yes, it may transform you. Yes, but it does not demand self-abandonment. If this bond is meant to grow, it will grow in truth. And if it cannot exist in truth, then truth itself will eventually release you from what was never meant to continue. So keep going, keep becoming, keep choosing clarity over confusion. Keep honoring the version of you that emerged through this experience, because that version is not an accident. That awakening is not an accident. The awareness growing in you now is not an accident. If this connection rises into something real, you will meet it from strength, not hunger. And if it dissolves into understanding, you will not be left empty. You will be left wiser, clearer, and more rooted in yourself than before. Either way, you return to you, and that return changes